Now, another bit of historical evidence that shows America was founded as a Christian nation can be documented in the writings of Samuel Adams, who has been called the father of the American Revolution. Listen as David Barton tells us about his life.
There were many examples that showed what the Founding Fathers thought about the laws of nature and nature's God, that they could not be part of a system that violated God's Word. Now, perhaps one of the clearest indications comes from the writings of Samuel Adams. Samuel Adams is called the father of the American Revolution. If it went on, he was probably behind it. He was behind the Sons of Liberty. He was behind the Boston Tea Parties. Sam Adams was even behind the Committees of Correspondence. And the Committees of Correspondence, that became the backbone, the central nervous system of the American Revolution. That was the way whereby they transmitted their orders, their plans, their thoughts all across the 13 colonies, for we had no network that shared common information. Well, the Committees of Correspondence had a threefold goal. Number one, they were to tell America what our rights were. Number two, they were to tell America how our rights had been violated. And number three, they were to just share news flashes across the nation. Now, Sam Adams, who started the Committees of Correspondence, who was the driving force behind the revolution, said, I'm going to write about the first part. He said, I want to explain to America how our rights have been violated and what our rights are. So in 1772, he came out with a writing called The Rights of Colonists. This is considered one of the top political writings of the American Revolution. It's right up there with Common Sense by Thomas Paine. In this writing in 1772, here Sam Adams, the father of the Revolution, is trying to explain to America what our rights are and how they've been violated. And how did he do it? Look at what he said. He said, the rights of the colonists as Christians, these may be best understood by reading and carefully studying the institutes of the great lawgiver and head of the Christian church, which are to be found clearly written and promulgated in the New Testament. Now here you've got Sam Adams telling America, if you don't understand what our rights are, if you don't understand how they've been violated, get back in the New Testament and do a little bit of study. You need to find out what our rights are, and they come from the New Testament. And here's the father of the American Revolution in a political writing saying, get back and study the New Testament if you don't understand what this is all about. You see, and that is something that was seen throughout, this religious emphasis on understanding the laws of God. John Adams carried a book with him in his saddlebags. It was called A Defense of Liberty Against Tyrants. It was written in 1689 by Junius Brutus. And this book was an exposition of Romans 13. It says, when is it right to resist a government? When is it wrong to resist a government? And this exposition of Romans 13, done 200 years before John Adams, was the book to which he turned to know, have we crossed the line? Are we still within God's parameters of civil disobedience? Because one of the things they could point out was that most of the people in chapter 11 of Hebrews in the Faith Hall of Fame were there for some point because of civil disobedience. So they knew that civil disobedience could be justified, and they wanted to make sure they didn't cross that line. Now, even in the acts we have of the American Revolution, some of the most famous paintings we have show the spirit that was behind it. Ethan Allen, there's a famous painting of Ethan Allen capturing Fort Ticonderoga. Now, this is in 1775, and this is still leading to the Declaration. 1775, Ticonderoga, that's an obscure fort out on the edge of nowhere. We didn't really need Fort Ticonderoga, but for Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys, they thought if we can harass the British out on the outpost, perhaps they'll divide their main body of troops and they'll go out there and send reinforcements and we can weaken the main body. So Ethan Allen surrounded Fort Ticonderoga at night, he and the Green Mountain Boys, and he walked up to the British Commandant's door the middle of the night and he banged on the door of the British Commandant. The British Commandant came to the door and Ethan Allen said, I order you to surrender your fort. And the Commandant backed up and looked at him and said, by whose authority do you order me to surrender my fort? And Ethan Allen raised his hand in the air, and this is the painting of Ethan Allen. He raised his hand in the air. He said, by whose authority? He said, in the name of the great Jehovah and the Continental Congress. And that evidently was sufficient for the British commander. He promptly handed the force over. He didn't even fire one shot, gave the fort to him on the spot. But it was that statement, in the name of the great Jehovah and the Continental Congress, that inspired that painting. And that is true of so many paintings of the American Revolution.